speech actually set me up perfectly. Fix this. There we go. All right, perfect. All right, so we are going to talk about something called the triple oxidative sink. Is diet a major key to inflammation? As a forewarning, I'm a plant nutrition doctor, so don't run out the room right now. I'm going to give you some information, some studies. It's going to blow your mind away, okay? So this balance of antioxidants versus pro-inflammatory products, Dr. Bonner was talking about cytokines causing inflammation, either through obesity, through the things we eat, through stress in our environment. These things set off this chain reaction that we feel may lead to disease. So we set this thing up by calling it a triple sink theory. Everyone has kind of a set level for their sink. Imagine seeing a sink, say your sink might be a foot thick, foot deep before it sprinkles over. Some people might just have 6 inches. That's the genetics part of it. From there, your body is fighting all the stress, fighting all the bad things we're putting in our body, fighting our diet, fighting our lifestyle to try to prevent the antioxidants from building too much. But if it does, it starts to spill over. And so you see this spillover effect, and from the spillover effect, you start seeing disease creep in. You see disease, then you see worsening inflammation, and then eventually you start getting things like end-stage diseases and cancer. So this is kind of the theory behind the triple sink, inflammation being a key problem in disease. So there's a lot of things that can cause, there are a lot of things that happen when things are inflamed. I know this is a tiny slide, let me just read you a few of them. Rheumatoid arthritis. How many people know what rheumatoid arthritis is? Yeah. So rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune diseases can take place when the inflammation is too high. How many people know what asthma is, or COPD? All right, again, these things, inflammation. You have a lot of things that can happen. You have people when they have a surgery, say that they start to clot after the surgery. This is what we feel like is a sign of them having a baseline set of too high inflammation to begin with. Like I said, I used to work in the hospital, and some people, they would get out of surgery and they'd be fine, no blood clots. I have other people who get a blood clot right away. And so you'd have higher risk of complications when inflammation is too high. So, surgery, skin, like dandruff, eczema, all these things cause inflammation, or from inflammation. So we say like this is from a study, the accumulation of advanced glycation end products, these are things that cause inflammation, enhance priming of the inflammatory cells for increased cytokine release. Remember, Dr. Bonner talked about the cytokines that are leaked from the fat cells. These cytokines are the things that during COVID, what we saw was actually triggering people to have worsening side effects. The cytokine storm, that is what we used to see a lot. Interesting enough, in the hospital, I would actually set up people on a certain diet. I'll talk about the diet a little bit later. And actually, I would be able to get them off the ventilators a little bit quicker on a certain diet that was anti-inflammatory. So when inflammatory cytokines are present, the organism's baseline reserve is compromised. The gut microbiome becomes imbalanced. And from there, you have a lot of diseases that occur. Working with Dr. Ryan here, we like to talk about the gut microbiome being a big part of disease, right? So that being offset, inflammation leads to worsening things. So the question is, how can we implement food to help fight sickness? And I hope we all can agree that processed foods are not that good, right? All right, so processed foods and animal products significantly affect the body's redox balance as the antioxidants and fiber have been removed or are present in significant amounts. We're finding that fiber is one of the major things that helps to offset inflammation. And so a lot of times we hear about different diets. The one diet I've never heard of is a high fiber diet, which is one of the most healthiest diets you can have because it counteracts inflammation. All right, so what does that look like? What does a high fiber diet look like? All right, well, let me first tell you all these other things that lead to inflammation, because I want to make sure that you guys realize it's more than just diet, but diet plays a key role. We talked about obesity already. We talked about smoking, drinking alcohol, stress, relationships, hydration. You have to drink 8 cups of water a day. If you're dehydrated, you set off inflammation. If you don't sleep well at nighttime, you set off inflammation. So all these things are important, but we're talking about diet today. So let's talk a little bit more about diet. A diet is the thing that leads to obesity. Like Dr. Bono was saying, when we eat the wrong foods, we start to build up excess calories, and that leads to obesity. Obesity leads to inflammation. Obesity-induced microbiome dysbiosis is another factor that further disrupts redox and balance. With the filling of the oxidative sinks from obesity, the expected increase in multiple disease states develop. These obesity-associated diseases include type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, asthma, infertility, sleep disorders, cancer, and then liver and kidney dysfunction. All right, so this is a big thing. We want to try to figure out how we fight through this inflammation problem. So let's talk about diet. There was a study that was done, and it was done over 60,000 participants in the early 2000s. And they started to wonder what was the best diet to help fight obesity and in turn fight inflammation. They said people that only eat meat. So this is the keto diet. All right, I'm gonna hit some people, but don't throw anything at me, okay? The keto diet, the worst diet. It actually, when you eat a lot of meat and not a lot of fruits and vegetables, over time you're gonna actually have a higher BMI than people who don't eat a lot of meat. So you want to make sure you don't exclude fruits and vegetables. I have people who come to my clinic all the time afraid to eat fruit. They're afraid to eat fruit. They're like, oh, it has sugar in it. Listen, that fruit has fiber in it. Fiber is the balancer of sugar. So eat your food, eat your vegetables. All right, now you have the semi-vegetarian. These are the people that eat vegetarian, say 3 days out the week, and then meat 4 days out the week. Semi-vegetarian. They have a little bit lower BMI, a little bit less obesity. Then you have the pesco-vegetarian. This is what people consider a Mediterranean diet. All right, Mediterranean diet is primarily fish-based and a lot of fruits and vegetables. They do have cheese, and then they do have olive oil. Olive oil is a great thing, and that actually helps to reduce BMI as well. Then you have people that are vegetarian, who are eggs, cheese, milk. They'll have a little bit lower BMI. Then you have people who are vegan. Now, I call myself plant-based, not vegan, because there's a few things that are different about it. But these are people who basically exclude animal products and eat fruits and vegetables and whole foods, and they have the lowest BMI. Why is that significant? There is a group called the Physicians Committee, and they studied a plant-based diet in a group of 64 women. At the start of the study, all the women were moderately or severely overweight. Participants followed two simple rules. They set aside all animal products and kept oils to a minimum. They lost 13 pounds on average in 14 weeks. I'll tell you, at the clinic, when I see people and I change their diet up a little bit, things happen quickly. One girl came in for acne, and she was shocked because I told her to cut some of these things out. She came back a month later, her acne was gone. I had one girl who had joint problems. I changed her diet, and parents couldn't believe it because in a week and a half, her joint problems were gone. And they didn't believe it so much that the dad gave her back this stuff, and she broke out in a rash and had all these joint problems. So they were like, okay, I'm gonna believe it now. Wow. So inflammation really does play a role, right? It plays a role. All right, so they lost 13 pounds on average in 14 weeks without calorie cutting or exercise. A year later, they maintained 11-pound weight loss. After 2 years, they were still below their original weight. It's pretty impressive. All right, so there's this book that they did on like a big study on diet. It's called the China Study. And there's a guy here, T. Colin Campbell, who I almost met. I was at a conference where he was talking, but he couldn't make it. But he wrote this book and did a study, and he started to look at dietary types and inflammation through China, and he started comparing people who lived in certain regions, if they ate peanuts, if they did this. He did a whole big study. It's a big book. If you guys want to read it, it's a great read. But basically, this is what he found. The China study revealed that a low-protein diet, which consists of 5% or less animal protein, I'm going to say animal protein, decreases enzyme activity and prevents dangerous carcinogens from forming. Even if protein consumption increases to 20% of our diet, the cancer danger increases when animal-based as opposed to plant-based protein is consumed. So the first thing is that protein, you can get it from anything because protein is a building block. The second thing is that they found that 5% is actually the safe range for animal protein or less. And I usually give people a range in my clinic. I say, hey, try to go to 0. So I say, hey, make sure it's less than 20%. And actually, all the people that got better, that's what I told them. I said, make sure less than 20%. If they start feeling better, they go to 0% by themselves. But I tell them, let's make sure less than 20%, down to 10 to 5% is when you're going to start seeing some true changes. The study went on to say the researchers also looked at casein, this is a milk protein, which makes up 87% of cow milk protein. They found that high doses of casein could actually activate cancer genes. And hold on to that, because I want to talk to us guys and us women about some newer studies that they're finding about the activation of cancer genes from eating too much dairy, especially cheese. But low or negligible amounts actually turn them off. So you can turn these genes on, you can turn these genes off. Very interesting. Furthermore, high dairy consumption increased the probability of developing prostate cancer. And that's what I want to talk to the guys about. I'm going to show you the study that proves that. Dietary animal protein and saturated fat were also associated with an increased risk of breast cancer. Again, I'm going to show you a study about that as well. Diets low in fiber will lead to higher rates of colon and rectal cancer. The study recommends that we reduce animal protein consumption and we eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, like Dr. Bonner was saying earlier. Fruits and vegetables. So now that we understand that, let's talk about a few studies and a few other interesting facts. I find that when people go plant-based, sometimes they eat unhealthy still. And it's because of these things. You have to watch out for these things. They're called seed oils, not just in plant-based foods. They're in many processed foods. I bought a bag of mangoes one time, and I thought I was just getting dried mangoes. No, it was dried mangoes with canola oil and safflower oil and this seed and that seed. And I said, Jasmine, what is happening? I thought I wanted mangoes. I thought I was going to dry my own mangoes at home. So watch out, they're hidden in everything, these seed oils. They're directly linked that we're finding to obesity. Seed oils are one of the major contributors to people who are actually quote-unquote plant-based and actually still unhealthy. So you want to make sure you limit them or avoid them altogether. That's what I do. So linoleic acid could be increasing our risk of obesity and related health problems, was what the study shows. So here's the study, and they found that actually those seed oils actually cause the fattening of body cells. So a lot of times people have trouble losing weight is because of the snacks they're eating, and the seed oils are in the snacks. So watch out for those. Next thing, we talked about cheese. This is one of my beloved. This used to be one of my beloved food. I'm telling you right now. Up until last year, this was my beloved. I would go to the store and buy a new cheese every week. It was expensive. It was a very expensive problem. But I would do some more research because I had joint pain, and I was trying to figure out why I had joint pain. And my joint pain went away when I gave up the cheese. Here's a study they found about women. A woman diagnosed with breast cancer. So they did a huge study based on cow's milk. They found women diagnosed with breast cancer and found that those who consumed the most American cheddar cream cheeses had a 50% increased risk of breast cancer. So they did this huge study on women. They found that cheese was directly linked to breast cancer. Now, I wish this study was out during October, because this would be a very good information to share with women, right? Decreasing the amount of cheese we eat. We think guys are not off the hook. This other study was even more profound. Milk protein casein actually promoted the proliferation of cancer in the prostate. And these two genes, like I said, turns them on, turns them off. A lot of guys, I really push this to guys, avoid eating cheese, at least cut it down to less than a half a cup a week is what is like the maximum that they found before you start seeing these changes in the prostate cells when their proliferation. Half a cup a week is, say you go and you have something that has cream in it for Monday. All right, we had your half a cup. All right, so try to cut it down to a half a cup. All right. All right. So the other thing, people come and talk to me when they're vegetarian or vegan and say, "Well, which sugar should I eat?" I'll tell you what I tell everyone who comes to my clinic. Try to eat things that are in their natural state. So honey, maple syrup, agave are better than an isolate. Try to avoid the isolates. So, and definitely avoid the fake sugars. All right, let me talk about these fake sugars. Artificial sweeteners and risk of cardiovascular disease. Right, so they found that artificial sweetener consumption, especially aspartame and sucrose and isoframine, increase cardiovascular disease risk. And it's sad because I think as doctors we tried initially to get people off of sugar by saying, hey, eat these artificial sugars, but the artificial sugars right? So what I tell people is try to cut sugar. If you have to add sugar, do maple, do honey, do agave, do something that's in its natural state. That's the healthiest for you. Molasses is good too. A lot of people don't like molasses. They did another study. Erythritol, one of the most popular sugar alcohols, is the subject of new findings released by the Cleveland Clinic. Elevated blood levels of this are associated with an increased chance of cardiovascular events like heart attack, stroke, and this is according to a publication called Nature Medicine. So again, alcohol, sugars, avoid them. When you're trying to get healthy, no seed oils, cut the cheese, and then no alcohol oils. All right. Again, I'm beating this one home because this is actually a lot of stuff. Artificial sweetened beverage, added sugar beverages increase risk of AFib. This just came to me from the American Academy of Family Practice. It said drinking 2 liters or more per week of artificially sweetened beverages increase the risk of what we call AFib, or an irregular heartbeat. And I would see this a lot in the hospital where I would have a hard time controlling people's heartbeats. And they would be addicted to Coca-Cola, and they would just keep drinking, and I'm chasing their heartbeat, and I'm like, hey, stop drinking Coca-Cola, and, so it's linked to this, so it's something that's been a problem. All right, drinking a similar amount of added sugar beverages raised the risk condition by 10%, while drinking about 4 ounces of pure unsweetened juices, such as orange or vegetable juice, was associated with an 8% lower risk in AFib. And so one thing we're finding, and when you drink these juices, make sure they're juiced in your home machine. If you go to the store, they're going to add sugar to it. Juicing, we're finding, and I'll do another talk about this later, is actually helps. There's the protocols I do in my clinic, where I give people green drinks and smoothies that are green, and actually helps to fight disease. So they don't find the same things when using fruits as compared to the artificial things, but my main point there. A review of research involving almost 10 million people has found a direct association between eating too many ultra-processed foods and more than 30 health conditions. So again, health conditions, processed foods, avoid them. I think this is my last one before I get to my closing points. Higher ultra-processed food intake was associated with about a 50% increase risk of cardiovascular-related deaths, and 48 to 50% higher risk of anxiety and common mental health disorders. 12% risk of greater risk of type 2 diabetes. So even mental health has been affected by these ultra-processed foods. There's a lot of things in them. If you can't pronounce the label, then you probably shouldn't be eating it. All right. So if it says it's supposed to be mangoes, make sure it's mangoes. If it says it's supposed to be almond milk, make sure it's almond milk. Almond, nut, water, and some salt. They want to put salt. That's it. That's the only one I get. All right. So. Also, highly suggestive evidence indicated that diets high in ultra-processed foods were associated with a 21% greater risk of death from any cause. All right, so in closing, there's this guy who went around the world. His name is Dan Bueter. I don't know if you guys know, he actually, I didn't realize this, he was actually a biker. He did like an Olympic thing. But he went around the world after he got a lot of money and tried to figure out who lived the healthiest. And he found this study called the Blue Zones. And these blue zones are areas of the world where people live the longest lives, consistently reaching age 100. How many people want to live to 100? I find this study very interesting. We got to find out what this guy's doing. All right, so these areas that we have are Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Japan, Loma Linda, California, Greece, Icaria, Greece, and then Costa Rica, Nicoya, Costa Rica. There you go. Yes, and then these people in blue zone areas have a diet that is 95% plant-based. So if you want to live long, you're saying eat more fruits and vegetables. Fruits, vegetables, beans, tofu, lentils, nuts, seeds are rich with disease-fighting nutrients and the cornerstone of their diets. When they eat meat, fish, eggs, or dairy, they treat it as a condiment rather than the feature item. All right, that's a big thing. So their main thing is eating what we call, when I lived in Dominica, we called it provision. They gave me a plate of provision, but they gave me anything else, right? And that's what we need to do. We eat our provision first, the fruits and the vegetables. One last shocking study was this Dr. Dean Ornish, who I actually had the great opportunity to meet him at one of my conferences. He did a test and he studied the effects of plant-based diet on participants with moderate to severe heart disease. There were no surgeries or stents, just simple diet and lifestyle changes. Within weeks, 90% of chest pain diminished. This is on a fully plant-based diet. Right? This is no animal products at all. After just 1 month, blood flow to the heart improved. After a year, even severely blocked arteries had reopened, and he was checking them actually on scans. He was doing MRIs and CTs of the heart to check that. 30 years later, all the compliant patients are still thriving. This was so impressive that he actually got a government funding so they could get placed in his program. I think Centera actually has this program in their hospital. So plant-based diet benefits include heart because they contain no dietary cholesterol, very little saturated fat, and abundant fiber. A high fiber diet is the key. All right, so in closing, let thy food be thy medicine. It's funny that as a doctor, that's what they tell us. And we don't really learn a lot about food a lot of times in medical school. But that's the first thing, let thy food be thy medicine. And then the guy from the China study said, this is what he found in his book, 75% of disease is preventable with diet alone.
Thank you.